Guys, what is the best revenge on a cheating partner? While I was deployed overseas, my girlfriend at the time was sleeping with multiple men while pretending to be the loyal, loving partner. She even went as far as to tell me she had been forced and was pregnant with my child, but had an abortion. Completely in the dark about all of this, I came back to the States, expecting her to be arriving on a flight and drove an hour to pick her up. Only, I found out she wasn't even on a plane and the whole story was a lie. I called her mother, who had just woken up from a nap on the other side of the country, and I got to catch her in the lie. A couple of weeks later, my ex's sister came to talk to me, and after hearing more about her deception from her sister, we ended up hooking up. In the middle of banging her sister, my ex walked in. Her face was priceless when she saw what was happening. It was incredibly satisfying to get some payback for everything she had put me through. As soon as my ex walked in, she tried to stop us, but what we didn't know was that she had come home with her mom. When her mom saw the situation, she grabbed my ex and dragged her out of the room, slamming the door behind her. We finished quickly and walked out to find her and her mom in a full-on catfight. It looked like two cats fighting in a bag, total chaos. Her whole family knew how she had treated me and felt she deserved everything that was happening. Her dad was furious and ready to throw hands at me, but I didn't stick around long enough to deal with that. Story 2. While I was pregnant, my boyfriend cheated on me. He travels for work during the week and was seeing another woman in another state. I decided to have a little fun with this, so I changed his mistress number in his phone to that of his female boss's number. So, it was her name, but the boss's phone number. When I confronted him, I threw a fit, naturally. He wanted to fix things, but I told him I'd only consider forgiving him if he texted his mistress, told her about his mistake, and ended the relationship. I also insisted he let her know I was 5 months pregnant. His message turned out to be more than I could have hoped for, and it went something like this. Hi, this is me from Tinder. I made a huge mistake sleeping with you for the last few months. My girlfriend is 5 months pregnant, and I don't know what I was thinking bringing you to my hotel each week while I was supposed to be working. I love her and I want to fix things with her. I'm sorry I misled you, and I need to end this affair because she caught me, and I don't want to lose her. You were a mistake. That message went straight to his boss. I can't imagine she was too thrilled to find out her employee had been sleeping with women he met online while he was supposed to be working at her expense. I have no idea what happened to him afterward. Honestly, I don't care. I'll never speak to him again. But damn, that revenge felt sweet. Story 3. Well, my girlfriend of 6 years and I broke up. More accurately, she broke up with me. This was just 4 months after we moved across the country from New Jersey to Colorado, at her request, so she could be closer to her parents. I had found a job, but otherwise, I was a stranger in a new place. She told me I needed to move out of the apartment we had just gotten, even though her parents lived just down the street and she could easily have gone to live with them. She couldn't afford the rent on her own, though I could, and eventually she left, and I lost my deposit. I begged her to let me keep the apartment. She didn't care. She refused to give an inch, even if it would have been better for both of us. So one day, I went back to the apartment to talk. I wanted her back and couldn't understand why, after 6 years, she suddenly didn't want to be with me. I kept asking if she was seeing someone else, but she insisted she wasn't. During the conversation, she said she was going to go get my friend to come pick me up. I had nothing left, having sold everything, including my car, to move out there. I was living on my friend's couch and many others after that. While she was gone, I decided to check the voicemail. The first message went something like, "Hi Tina, listen, you need to change your voicemail. It says, we are not home, and if Alex calls and hears that, he's going to know you've been seeing someone else the whole time you've been with him." That's how I found out. I was devastated and furious at the same time. The truth had finally come out. She had been lying and cheating on me the whole time, and she dragged me across the country to do it. So, I did what any rational person would do in that situation. I changed the voicemail access code. Then, I changed the outgoing message to something like, "Hi, this is Halbowitz. I'm not home right now because Tina has been unfaithful to me and sleeping with a guy named Alex." Of course, she never admitted it and thought it would be easier to kick me out with nothing but the shirt on my back and her lies still ringing in my head. I left a few other choice words, but that was the gist of it. Since the phone was in my name, she couldn't get rid of that message. For weeks after, anyone who called when she wasn't around got that message. She didn't call her own number often, so it took her a while to realize what I had done. When she found out, she was livid. Honestly, it felt good to get a little satisfaction from that. She made the breakup as difficult as possible while I bent over backward to keep things going. It wasn't much, but it was something I could hold on to. Story 4. My ex-girlfriend of 8 years, who cheated on me for 4 of those years without me knowing until the end, showed up at a conference I was attending. This was after a couple of years of no contact. The first year, I was devastated after discovering what she'd done, but by the second year, a lot had changed for the better. When we first saw each other at the conference, we locked eyes, but she acted like she didn't see me and walked away through the crowd. About an hour later, she found me again and politely invited me to a show at the conference. I went, not realizing her new boyfriend was the main attraction. She was trying to throw his success in my face. I stayed cool, not mentioning that I, too, was in a new relationship. We parted ways after the show, agreeing to meet for lunch in a couple of days. 2 days later, my new girlfriend arrived at the conference. By then, we'd been together for 4 months and are still together now, a year later. My girlfriend is a well-known celebrity, incredibly gorgeous, and a bigger geek than I am. My ex could never have imagined I'd get so lucky. I arrived at the restaurant first to greet my ex and her boyfriend. I stood with my back to the door, chatting with them while they sat at their table. Then, just at the right moment, my girlfriend walked in. People immediately started taking pictures, asking for autographs, etc. My ex and her boyfriend noticed her, but I kept them distracted. A couple of minutes later, my girlfriend came up behind me, wrapped her arms around me, spun me around to face her, and kissed me passionately in front of my ex, her boyfriend, and everyone else in the restaurant. She then sweetly introduced herself to my ex and her boyfriend, as if they didn't already know who she was, while both of their jaws were on the floor and my ex looked like she was going to throw up. At the end of the conversation, my girlfriend told my ex, "Nice meeting you. What was your name again, and whisked me away, saying she had a surprise for me back at the hotel. I don't regret it, I never will. My ex can rot in the hell she made for herself." Story 5. When I was in my 20s, I was with a girl I really cared about. I thought we were going to be together forever. She was beautiful, sweet, smart, and independent. I got the sense she wanted to be with me, not because she needed someone. It made me feel great. But then, one day, I caught her sleeping with another guy. I was devastated. Instead of yelling, screaming, or acting out in anger, I just said, "Oh crap. Sorry," and walked away. I never picked up the phone again, never went back to get my stuff or any of that drama. I just cut her off completely. She called, left voicemails, and sent texts. They started out as, "You have to let me explain," then, "Please give me another chance," and eventually the fact that you showed no emotion and just cut me off shows you never cared about me. It eventually turned to her saying she hated me and was glad she did it, then she'd apologize and beg me to talk to her. It was clear that my reaction was eating her up inside. It hurt, but you move on. In the end, she wasn't the right one. Now, I'm happily married with 2 kids, 2 dogs, and a house. Life has its ups and downs, but don't let them define you. Story 6. About 10 years ago, an ex-girlfriend emailed me to say things weren't working out and that she had met the unconditional love of her life, something she had told me I was, by the way. Needless to say, I was a bit hurt, but there wasn't much I could do about it. I thought about it for a while, and the more I did, the angrier I became. Eventually, I moved on and completely forgot about her, so much so that I didn't think about her at all. A few years later, I ran into her working at a hotel reception desk, and I didn't even recognize her. She was acting a little off, and I just assumed she was having a bad day or something. I got my key, went to my room, and went about my business. The next morning, I was heading out to get breakfast and ran into her in the lounge area. She tapped me on the shoulder, I guess she worked the night shift, and started to challenge me. I was confused and said, "Whoa, whoa, whoa. If I did something to offend you, I'm sorry, but who the hell are you?" Then she said, "I'm so glad I married him and not you, you're such a piece of crap." That's when the light bulb finally went on, and I realized who she was. She looked miserable, and honestly, that made me really happy. Looking back, I'm kind of proud of myself for having moved on so completely that I didn't even remember what she looked like. It's almost funny how she expected me to dwell on her like I lost the best thing in my life, like she thought I'd be depressed for years about it. And as if that wasn't enough, I ended up meeting a woman in Germany who's basically the female version of me. It's been amazing. Funny how things work out when you just let life flow, right? Story 7. I moved far away from my home and friends to a place where my wife could have horses, as it wasn't financially possible where we were. After a year, I managed to find a decent-paying job, though it was a night shift. Over time, I noticed she was becoming distant. She didn't want to be intimate with me or spend time together. I was disturbed, but figured it was just a rough patch we'd work through. Turns out she was having an affair. I later found out that when I left for work, her boyfriend would come over for the night. Thanks, neighbors, for not telling me sooner. Anyway, we got divorced, she insisted. I was still trying to make it work, but I moved out. The boyfriend moved in and parked his Corvette in front of the house. However, karma had its way with them. They were driving on the narrow, winding road to our country house when they collided at high speed with another car. The boyfriend spun the car, and the passenger's side took the full impact. He barely had a scratch. She, on the other hand, was severely injured and spent weeks in the hospital with multiple broken bones and other injuries. I never wished her harm or tried to get revenge, but she did this to herself. By the way, the boyfriend dumped her and moved to another state to avoid her lawsuit. Karma is a bitch. Story 8. I'm pretty sure I was cheated on once. About 6 months into a relationship, my girlfriend ghosted me, starting when she didn't show up for a date on her birthday. I could see her online activity, but she wouldn't respond to me at all. I assumed she cheated on me and was too ashamed to face me. I quickly stopped caring about her and began dating the woman I would eventually marry just 4 months later. The real revenge came about a year later when I was walking through a transit station in my army uniform. I had gotten in much better shape, and the uniform looked great on me. I spotted her across the station near my exit. She actually tried to wave at me, but I didn't even acknowledge her. Over the years, I saw her 2 more times. About 4 years later, I was biking home along a beautiful beach when I saw someone wave at me. I didn't stop, but when I got home, I checked the footage from the camera I keep on my bike. It was her again. 5 years after that, I was leaving a store after exchanging a pair of pants for my wife. I was on the phone with her when I saw my ex walking towards me, smiling. I just sidestepped her and kept going. Then my wife asked me to go back to the store to get a different size. I think my ex thought I hadn't seen her the first time, so she tried to approach me again. I sidestepped her again. The third time, after getting the new size, I passed by the same spot and saw her sitting on a bench, looking sad. We locked eyes and I just laughed and walked away. Story 9. I left my ex after I'd had enough of her cheating and the violent, toxic behavior fueled by drinking. I had just landed a better job, so I moved in with a friend since my ex and I had been living together. My friend started dating a realtor, and she helped me get into a house with a huge yard, something my ex and I had always talked about. I started losing weight, made a group of lady friends, and began spending a lot more time with my friends. I went from being stuck in a toxic apartment situation to being a happy homeowner. Meanwhile, she bounced from one boyfriend to the next until she ended up with someone who was a regular at the bar where we both worked. He eventually went to jail for pistol whipping her on a regular basis. Then she married a guy she can't stand. I only know all this because, for years later, she still randomly gets drunk and sends me long, desperate texts about how bad her life is and how much she misses us. Story 10. Level up in every way possible. After leaving my cheating ex, I focused on improving myself. I got in shape and developed a skill that now brings in great money. Eventually, I met my wife, who I've been with for 12 years now. She's so beautiful that even my ex had to give me credit. Plus, she's a registered nurse working on her master's degree. What I love about our relationship is that we don't need each other, we want each other. My ex, who's still working as a cashier, nothing wrong with that, is nowhere near where I am now. I've surpassed her in so many ways. I'm a homeowner while she's still rooming with a friend. It's really her loss. I live in a small town in Rhode Island, so I occasionally run into her. Yes, she broke my heart once, but I took her soul, and to me, that's the ultimate victory. Story 11. My mom cheated on my dad with the father of a family she worked for as a nanny. In the divorce, she received half of his pension and primary custody of my brother and me. For the next decade, she told us the split happened because my dad was too stingy with money, causing constant arguments. Despite all that, he remarried an old high school flame who owns a successful heating and air business, which has allowed them to live comfortably. They bought a large piece of land in the countryside and started the horse and cattle farm he'd always dreamed of. Now, he's happier than I've ever seen him. My mom still doesn't know that I know the full story, and I'm torn about whether I should confront her about it. Story 12. When I was 3 months pregnant, I walked in on my then best friend and my husband, on my couch, while I was sleeping in the next room. Needless to say, drama followed. There was a divorce, they moved in together, etc. A few months later, I happened to drive by her ex-boyfriend's house. I lived on the same street, and I wasn't stalking anyone, and saw the two of them making out on his front deck. I honked my horn on the way by, so she knew I saw her, then never brought it up again. For the last 3 years, I've been getting along with everyone fairly well. Given that a baby was involved in all this drama, there was no avoiding them, all while secretly enjoying watching her squirm whenever I see them together. And, of course, I get the satisfaction of knowing my cheating ex ended up stuck with someone just like him. Best revenge I could have asked for. Story 13. I'm a middle-aged man going through a divorce from a middle-aged woman who cheated on me. It's been 2 years since she left me for her 22-year-old karate instructor, and we're still not finalizing the divorce. About a year into it, the agreement had to be signed, and everything was retroactive. So, once I signed it, I became a deadbeat dad with a few thousand in back child support and over $10,000 in alimony owed. I tried to challenge the retroactive clauses, but my lawyer couldn't find a way around it. To make matters worse, my ex put a lien on our jointly owned house and froze my bank accounts. My life's been a mess, my credit's destroyed, and I'm filing for bankruptcy. Now, 2 years later, the house is for sale as a short sale, and the banks are panicking about every penny they'll lose. When they discovered the lien, they realized they'd lose even more, since the lien has to be paid out of their share. My ex is now freaking out because the banks rejected an offer. They wanted more money. She sent an email to both her lawyer and mine, but not me, claiming that I was holding up the sales because of the lien. She demanded that my lawyer take action to have the lien removed. That's when I got the sweet chance to tell her that I actually liked the lien. If the house sells, the money I owe gets paid off. And if it doesn't sell, I'm declaring bankruptcy anyway, so it doesn't matter. She's been going crazy in emails ever since, lashing out at everyone. It's pretty satisfying to watch her unravel. Story 14. I had a pretty on and off friendship with a girl throughout high school. We were never officially boyfriend and girlfriend, but I did develop strong feelings for her twice. It was one of those situations where two really good friends end up taking things further. The first time, I learned a hard lesson and ended up really hurt by her actions. The second time around, though, I made sure to take control. This girl was spoiled by her mom, and it showed in how she treated people. She had a way of making me feel like everything that went wrong was my fault, and I always felt foolish afterward, knowing exactly what she was doing. At the end of senior year, we started getting close again, having deep conversations and reconnecting. But then she hooked up with one of my closest friends at prom. The next morning, she told me she wanted to be with me, and I should have walked away then. But I wasn't very experienced with relationships at that point, and we ended up becoming exclusive without defining it. The problem was, once she had me, it seemed like she didn't want me anymore. She'd start fights for no reason, make me feel worthless, and treat me like I was just an option. We went on breaks twice over the course of a month, and both times, she hooked up with my friend. She told me it was just for fun. Eventually, we patched things up right before my friends and I went on a graduation trip for 2 weeks. She said we should take another break but promised she would stay faithful. I, being crazy about her, told her I was only interested in her, which was true. While I was away, I remained faithful, except for an incident with a woman who forced herself on me, but that's a whole different story. When I got back, I tried to talk to her, but she seemed happy yet distant. She was always busy with work or orientation, and when we did talk, her responses were cold and short. I started to feel like something was off. Then one day I found her blog post where she wrote, "Is it bad to move on?" I thought I knew where happiness lied. The ones I loved, the one I cared about, we had plans, we had a future, and part of me just doesn't care anymore. That was it. I had enough. I checked her Facebook and saw that she was posting a lot of pictures with a new guy she had met at orientation. I confronted her about it, but she told me it was none of my business, and I had never said we were officially back together. A day later, everyone was at a friend's July 4th party, and I ended up getting high and flirting with one of her close friends. She watched while her friend and I slipped away to a bedroom. On the way, I made sure to look my ex in the eye and smile, asking, "Hey, what's up? Enjoying yourself?" The look on her face, the anger, regret, and tears, was everything I hoped for. The next day, she told me I was an asshole for being immature, but honestly, it felt like the perfect revenge. Story 15. As much as I agree that moving on and living a happy life is a good idea, I did get a bit of revenge on my ex-wife. She left me for her ex-boyfriend, who she had led us all to believe had died a year earlier. She asked me to send her some things to Missouri, including her wedding dress. I sent everything she requested, but I had a little fun with it. Everything went into Ziploc bags, because ashes weigh a lot less than actual clothing. I even set up a bonfire and took pictures of the whole thing to prove what I was sending. Haven't heard from her since, and now I'm happily married to a woman who isn't as crazy. Story 16. After I had a health issue, my wife left so she could live her life. I recovered, joined a gym, took up whip dancing, and made sure to go out with friends at least 4 nights a week. I spent weekends fishing with my grown kids, dated a little, but more importantly, I made a lot of female friends who really helped boost my self-worth. 11 years later, I married an incredible woman who makes my life amazing. We've been together almost 30 years now, and she even told me she owes my ex a debt of gratitude for making me available. Meanwhile, my ex quickly remarried a guy she met at a bar, who refused to work, so she ended up supporting both of them. She's still unhappy with her life. As far as I'm concerned, the best revenge is to forget they exist and enjoy your life. Story 17. It wasn't me, but my neighbor. He came home a few days early from deployment to surprise his wife for their anniversary, only to walk in on her and his best friend, Bear, in their bed. In a fit of rage, he threw both of them out the window. Fortunately, it was the first floor, into the snow-packed yard. Then he locked them out of the house. This was in Fairbanks, Alaska, in January, so it was about -50 degrees Fahrenheit outside, pretty brutal. I happened to be out with my dogs and witnessed the whole thing, and I could barely contain my laughter. His command was called, military police showed up, and his wife was given some clothes before being sent to her mom's house. We never saw her again. As for my neighbor, he ended up getting the best deal. He got out of the marriage with no kids, no alimony, and his command didn't hit him with an Article 15. He got a divorce and owed her nothing. His buddy, on the other hand, also active duty, was charged with adultery, which led to him being busted down to an E-nothing faster than you can blink. He lost his pay and was confined to the barracks for a year. My neighbor was more than happy to spill the tea on that situation. Story 18. Block, delete. Set up a filter in Gmail to send their email straight to trash. But honestly, revenge can be the sweetest form of satisfaction. He was the one who ended things, but after all the abuse I endured, I wasn't just going to let it slide. Somehow, I managed to find his best friend on Instagram. She's not someone I knew much about, but I dug a little. Turns out, not long ago, he'd taken advantage of her underage daughter while they were all hanging out. The mother was drunk and asleep, and I wasn't even there at the time. He told me about it because he was spiraling into a deep depression and needed someone to talk to. I couldn't believe it, but I told the mother everything he said about the incident. He tried to justify it by saying it was fine because the girl wanted it and it was legal. He was even laughing it off like it was no big deal. The mother responded, calling him out for being a piece of trash, saying he had a history of getting blackout drunk and taking advantage of women. She warned me that if I had been the one he'd been taking advantage of, I should get out of the situation. She spent most of the message blasting him for all the terrible things he'd done. I just screenshot the message and sent it straight to him. I can only imagine how that must have flipped his world upside down. Story 19. I was with a girl right after high school for a while, but she cheated regularly, and I, being young and stupid, just kept trying to fight the guys she was seeing. Eventually, I stopped caring and moved on. After some time, I guess she got tired of being treated poorly by other guys and came crawling back. By then, I was done with her, but I was also broke and needed tickets to a music festival the following week. So, I told her I'd meet her for 1 hour in a public place if she brought me tickets to the concert. Surprisingly, she agreed. When we met, I told her that I'd hang out with her at the 3-day festival if she got us a hotel room nearby. To my shock, she did that too. That first night we hung out, then went back to the hotel. We hooked up, and the next day, while we were at the festival, My Chemical Romance played I Don't Love You Like I Loved You Yesterday. I walked up to her, kissed her, and said, "This song is for you." Then I went and played in the mud, and after the set, I ran into another girl I had been talking to for a while and left with her instead. Story 20. I worked as a server at wedding venues, and one day, a couple was renewing their vows. Everything was going smoothly for hours, but then the wedding cake came out. The cake was a beautiful creation with a snow-capped mountain scene on top. 2 figurines, dressed in ski gear, were embracing at the peak, while another figurine in a 4x4 with sunglasses and a smoke coming out of the exhaust was driving into the sunset at the bottom. It was truly a masterpiece. As the bride looked at the cake, you could see her studying it, her demeanor shifting noticeably. Then, during the speeches, the husband stood up and made a public announcement. He had discovered she'd been having an affair with her ski instructor, and he was filing for divorce. He also made it clear that she was going to be left with nothing. It was incredible but pretty sick. Story 21. Not my story, but from a much older Reddit post. A man comes home one day to find out his wife has been cheating on him with another man. Due to the unfair divorce laws in the country, he loses the house to her. Within weeks, the boyfriend moves in, and they start their happy life in the home his money paid for. Angry and seeking some form of mild revenge, he decides to visit the house one last time to gather his things while his ex is at work. While eating lunch, he gets a devious idea. He takes the shrimp shells from his plate and stuffs them into the empty spaces of the curtain rods in every room. A few days later, the ex calls him, complaining about a horrible smell, but he denies smelling anything on every visit to collect his belongings. The stench only grows worse. They tear the house apart searching for the source, but can't find it. They eventually try to sell the house, but no matter how many windows they open or vanilla candles they burn, the shrimp smell lingers. The house's value plummets, and just as they're about to take it off the market, the ex begs her former husband to buy it from her. He agrees, but only at a massively discounted price. The shrimp shells are finally removed, the curtain rods are replaced, and he reclaims his home. Story 22. Karma ended up taking care of things for me. My last ex, right after my ex-wife, might have been a rebound, but I'm not sure. She did a lot of petty and nasty things, like trying to make my dog run away, and talking trash about my mom after my mom told her she needed to teach her daughter manners for trying to steal a yogurt without asking. The yogurt thing was small, but don't talk bad about my mom. Anyway, after I broke up with her, she ended up marrying some random guy just 2 weeks later, who later went to jail for beating up his ex with a bar stool. The few times I've seen her since, she's gained a lot of weight and has an even worse attitude than when we were together. Meanwhile, I met the love of my life, bought a house, and am living my best life. Story 23. The best way to handle a bad breakup is to cut ties completely. Stop seeing them, delete them from your phone and social media, and do the same with anyone associated with them or who reminds you of them, unless that person is a true friend who adds value to your life. Use the time you now have to do things you enjoy, meet new people, and eventually find someone who truly deserves you. Give yourself some me time for about 3 months to a year before jumping into another relationship, though. And don't look back, not even if your ex tries to pull you back in. Especially if they try to. If you're struggling with obsessive thoughts about them or the pain they caused, try creating a mental cue, a word, phrase, or image that helps you redirect your thoughts whenever they pop up. If that doesn't work, consider talking to a therapist who can help you work through what's blocking your ability to move on. Sometimes the issues aren't even about your ex, but about something deeper you need to resolve. Story 24. I had a girl I treated like a queen for about a year. Everything seemed great until I found out she was cheating on me with one of her coworkers. I wasn't as heartbroken as I was just furious. Everything seemed perfect up until that point. She lived in a small rural town, while I lived in a growing microcity. I would take her out to places she couldn't even pronounce and showed her a real night on the town every time she visited me. After she cheated, I wanted some kind of revenge. I spent hours online searching for properties all over the world and collected a bunch of addresses. Knowing all her personal info, I started submitting change of address forms for her at the post office. For about 2 weeks, I made sure her mail was redirected to various places around the globe. She never figured it out, and my roommates and I had a lot of fun with the chaos it caused. Story 25. My ex broke my heart, and I was desperate for revenge. But instead of focusing on getting back at her, I came across a video about handling breakups, where a guy said he hit the gym to cope with his breakup. Since I was extremely skinny, I decided to give it a try. I put on a lot of weight, but it wasn't easy. I had to eat so much that I would sometimes throw up, and my body felt like it was being torn apart from the soreness. After 3 months, when she saw me, the look on her face was priceless. She waited for me to get on the bus, but when I drove off instead, I could see her shock. That was the moment I realized that the best revenge is focusing on yourself and becoming a better version of who you were. Story 26. This is for my sister. Her husband was caught cheating after taking 2 years off work for his mental health. During that time, she took on everything, barely making ends meet. Now, he has a job with a much higher salary than hers and just moved out after she confronted him about his cheating. They have kids together, but he's being a real pain. He filed papers and claims he has a lawyer, but she can't afford one since she's paying all the bills for the place he moved out of and he refuses to help, despite having signed another year-long lease with her just 2 months before moving out. I just want to make his life difficult since he's not taking any responsibility for the mess he's created in my sister's life. Story 27. You could subscribe him to a bunch of services using his email, phone number, Facebook, and address. Give his details to as many advertising companies as possible since they'll sell that data to others. Extra bonus points if you sign him up for free online contests. Most of those exist solely to gather and sell your data to marketers. It's not dangerous, just really annoying. I thought about doing this because of some awful in-laws. I kept procrastinating and eventually, they weren't my in-laws anymore, so I never followed through. I'm happy to share the idea though. Hopefully, this gives you some satisfaction. It won't undo what he's doing to your sister, but maybe it'll feel a little better for now. I also hope his info ends up with those persistent scammers. No matter how much you yell at them, they never stop calling. Story 28. I'm doing better than ever. My ex found me and my current partner on a dating site. We had a joint profile looking for a third, but it didn't quite work out. She completely lost it and blamed me for ruining her life. Apparently, she was upset that my best friends wanted nothing to do with her after she cheated on me. I was a jerk after we broke up, but I apologized. Then she started insulting my partner, who I've been with for 8 years now and I've never been happier. It's kind of satisfying knowing she's had a rough time trying to get back on her feet. She ended up moving back in with her mom, turned to Seg's work, and just drifted along. I'm not here to knock Seg's work, but it's a far cry from her dream of becoming an environmental lawyer or a public health expert. It seemed to change every few months. But I've let go of the pettiness. I'm actually thankful she cheated. It would have been a disaster if I'd asked her to marry me, given how deluded I was thinking we were meant to be just because we were childhood best friends. It wasn't meant to be. She's doing well now with a great job and a name for herself, and I'm happy for her. As for me, I have everything I ever wanted. Funny how life works out. Story 29. To be honest, the best response is to forget about them and move on. I know it sucks. You find out that the person you loved didn't feel the same way, and has been going behind your back to hide that from you. They didn't trust you as an adult to speak freely about their feelings and felt that deceiving you was a better option. But being petty and hooking up with someone else, or destroying shared property, or taking any sort of measures as retaliation will make the situation worse, and will make you look bad. Revenge is a dish best served cold, they say. Forget about them. They didn't give a damn about you. Why should you go to any extra lengths to prove that you still care about them? Accept that what you had is gone. It'll take time. It'll feel terrible. You'll grieve. You'll be depressed for a time. But you will come out on the other side a better person for it because you won't be dwelling on your feelings. Then you can start to date other people. Find someone that does care about you. Find someone worth spending your time on and bending over backward for. Find someone who is far better for you than your ex ever was, and lead a happy life. If they ever look back and think about what could have been, they'll see you happy, living your best life, without them in it. When that happens, you'll have your revenge, and you'll never even know it. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to give it a thumbs up, subscribe, and hit the bell icon so you never miss an update.